Well, welcome to Martini time. I'm really kind of excited about this evening's talk because in the afternoons we watch British mysteries, and they quite often have a martini. But the two British mysteries we watch were Midsummer Murders and Murder in Paradise, and both of them. Same with all British mysteries, but there is a aha moment when the detective connects the dots. I know who did it. And they go rushing off to find it. So anyway, I feel a little bit like that this evening because I've been today I've been working on Facebook in my writings and in my meditations on ideas. I get an idea and I meditate on it, and by meditating on it, I mean by just working on it, working at it, writing it out, getting into dialogue with people on Facebook, and the same idea keeps coming out, and I keep working it. It's kind of like dough, and it's kind of like a mystery. There's something I want to see, there's something I want to grasp, so I keep working it, keep working the dots, keep working the information. And I've been working on this one my whole life. And the mystery is, what is the ego? Okay? Because I did this morning's talk, it was on Catch the Ego Live, and it was on my Eckhart Tolle talk, and he's always talking about the ego. So the ego is kind of like the murderer. You know it's there, but you don't know who it is. You know something's wrong, but you don't know who did it. Right? It's kind of like in The Usual Suspects. The character there was Charlie, I forgot his name, but he manipulated the whole movie, and nobody knew he was there. He was just the great deceiver. So the ego is kind of like the great deceiver. Even the ego doesn't know he's there. That's the big deception. So I wanted to talk about, I was reading a little bit in quantum mechanics this morning, and something just clicked. And the big problem we have today is, particularly with Trump and with modern news, with the left, the blue and the red realities, with the scientific worldview and the religious worldview. And all of these worldviews will use facts. And the worldview that doesn't agree, well, like with Trump, I mean, and they even said, Kellyanne said, well, Trump uses alternative facts. So we really can't understand how this can happen. How can a logical, sane person use alternative facts to the same event that everybody's saying? If you see an event out there, and one person says it means this, and another person means that, and yet it was one event. So this is really very confusing today, because we know, in our heart of hearts, science knows, we all know, there's only one reality. There are not 2, 5, 6, 20 millions of realities. There's only one reality. And so each one claims to be the one reality. So the other one is false. The other one's using alternative facts, you see. And so everybody's using the real facts, and everyone else is using alternative facts. So how does this happen? I've been very curious about this. So let me do the best to explain the mechanics in it. It's difficult to explain, but it has to do with the green screen. In other words, in the murder mysteries, the detective explains how the murder did it, and it's always about some trick. The murderer used some deception, some trick to deceive the detectives, you see, throw them off track. what is this trick when it comes to the ego? You see, because now the ego is our mystery. We're tracking the ego. And of course the ego is us. It's not somebody else. We're all ego. We all have an ego. If you're listening to me, you're listening to me through your ego. And I'm talking to you through mine, you see. So we have an ego. It's not like you get rid of it. But we need to understand it. So let's take a go at this, okay? So anyway, with quantum physics, there's a strange phenomena that has confused Einstein in his relativity theory and Newtonian physics, all of physics. Quantum physics has come up against a problem that is not explained by traditional classical logic. And that problem is that under experimentation in subatomic particles, an electron or a proton, or these particles, will be seen as, one, either a particle or as a wave. Now, a wave is a field, okay? And a particle is a thing. So now you get a look at reality. Oh, the thing is the foreground, okay, and the field is the background. Okay? You get that idea? Okay, so you get, I'm sorry, this is reversed. All right, forget the writing. This is the electron, this is the field. You can see that the dot, the thing is what is the foreground, and the field is the background. Okay, let's leave it at that. Sorry about that. So what we're looking at here is that everything we look at as an object is the foreground. So if I say, look at this marker, that's foreground, and it's taken out of the background, which is everything else. Or if I say, look at this lighter, now you're looking at this lighter, that's the particle. The background goes into is the background out of which it comes, goes in, is blurred. If you're into photography and you put on a narrow lens, a zoom lens, it focuses on an object, but the background's blurred. If you have it's a really powerful lens, you can't see anything. It's just all blurred. But then you put on a wide-angle lens and you see the whole background. Everything's in focus. So the wide-angle lens shows the field, background, and the narrow lens, or the ego, which is, remember now that the ego is a subject-object camera. The ego is the subject, and it looks at objects. You see, so the ego is like a narrow focus lens. It's only going to look at objects that are going to benefit it. You know, that's going to give me pleasure, I'm going to get that, and that one's going to hurt me, I'm going to run away from that. So the ego uses a narrow focus lens. But nothing has any meaning unless it comes out of a background. So this has meaning in this context here because it's my father's lighter that he got in China on the Yangtze River in 1932. All right? So that's the meaning of that. But suppose you found it out on the street. Well, you would say it's a lighter, but it would not have the value meaning that I give it in this context here. And then suppose you gave it to an Aborigine in Australia, and they wouldn't know what it was. You see, they would have no context or background to give it meaning. So the point is that the background gives meaning to the foreground. We just assume that. This is why everybody bitches when you take something out of context. If I say something, you take it out of context, you take it out of the background or the context that gives it meaning, and then you give it a different meaning. Now, so getting back to the field and the particle, So what quantum physics concludes is that when you observe something, in other words, the electron is both a field if you set up the experiment one way. If you set it up, the electron is a particle. Now this is not logical. It doesn't fit Aristotelian logic, which says the marker is a marker and it can't be a lighter. It can't be a lighter at the same time. The lighter is a lighter, the marker is a marker. The marker can't be a lighter and a marker simultaneously, right? But the electron is both a wave and a field simultaneously. However, we can't see that simultaneity. We can only see what the observation shows us. Now, what quantum mechanics has concluded, I was just reading this today, so it's my latest clue, is that when you observe something, the field collapses so that you just see the object. Now, that was just saying that. When you observe something with a narrow focus lens, the wide angle collapses and you just see the object you're looking at. And then you determine if the object is good or bad and what its meaning is, right? But the background has disappeared. The background is gone. So where does the background come from to give meaning to the objects? Well, here's where the green screen comes in. So if we are not grounded in a spiritual practice, the attention of which is to see reality as it is, to see what is, if we're not in that in that practice, and we're just doing the world, and we're doing what the world conditions us, and we're just doing the world, you know, the background is like a green screen. So if this is an event appears, and I want to know what the meaning of this thing is, the green screen effect comes in, and the background is going to be my story, my ideology, my political party, my religion, my personal conditioning. All these different layers of stories will be green screened in behind this foreground object. So other people will see the object, everyone will see it, but everyone's got a different green screen background. So the background determines the meaning of this object, and it's crazy to somebody else because they've got a different background. So the background that we green screen in from our conditioning, our identity politics, our identity religion, our identity story, that gives the meaning, and we actually perceive it. We actually perceive the meaning of this according to the green screen that we put on it, you see. So there's going to be conflict here between my green screen meaning of this and your green screen meaning of this, but then there is a third middle way. And this is what Buddhism is all about. So if your practice is to see reality as it is, that means you're going to learn how to put on a wide-angle lens so you see reality as it really is, and then the foreground, the meaning of things, will be part of the real, of being, of reality as it is, instead of my story of reality. Now here's the kicker. Is that the background out of which all the objects in the world that we name, every time you name something, you pull it out of a background. It doesn't really exist until you actually name it and see it. That's why if something suddenly appears and we have no understanding of it, we have to name it. Because suddenly something new has come out of a background and we have no idea what it is. Space Odyssey 2001 was all about that. Remember that obelisk? Nobody knew what it was because it had no reference to the background. The monkeys didn't know what it was, and the astronauts didn't know what it was. It had no reference. So if you take away the reference, we don't know what the thing is. This is the MacGyver principle. We love that show because a MacGyver, whatever fix he's in, he can use whatever's available to get him out of a fix. The fundamentalist can't use MacGyver, that principle. Take this for instance. This is a marker. I define it. I know what it is. That's a marker. You use that to write on whiteboards. Now, suppose you were stuck you were stuck somewhere and you needed a digger. Well, now the marker would become a digger, and you dig your way out. But the literal mind would say, "Oh, wait a minute! You can't use that as a digger. That's a marker. Everything's static. Everything's in its place." You see. So anyway, a little digression there. But I guess the point is, that kind of makes me excited because the kicker to this is that we cannot perceive with our ego the true background of reality, which is we call being or existence or the totality or the all. You can't see the total. You can't see the total because you can't make it into a thing. You can't make the totality into a foreground. Because once you make it into a foreground so you can talk about it and look at it, you see, the background is still there that you don't see. So usually what we do, we talk about being or God or the totality. We just talk about ideas. We don't see the totality. We don't see the being. So being, the true background, is transcendent. It's transcendent of perception. So all we can see in perception with the ego, with a little me, a little seer, a little chooser, you see, a little me in there, which we have to have, you know. So this little me sees stuff, you know, and we name it. And we learn what everything is. Kids, when they grow up, they get indoctrinated into this background reality and they know what everything is, you know. And then we judge our value on how much we know and everything. This is the known, you know. But the being of everything is unknown. It's transcendent of experience, because experience can only experience what we perceive as objects. Even this room would be the totality of this particular space, but it's a foreground. I mean, I can see the room, you see? So I don't see the totality in which the room is selected from, you see. So this idea then that being is transcendent, which just means it's beyond experience. It's nothing, doesn't mean it's up in the sky or whatever. It just means it's beyond experience, that you can't experience the totality. And we notice that we give God that name. So God is the totality, and you can't experience God as a thing. You can talk about God as an object, an idea, but you can't go experience God as something. So we make called a false idol or a substitute in which to worship God, you see. But we don't know being in itself. Immanuel Kant was the first Western philosophy to discover that. You can't know the thing in itself. So the point is here that since the totality is transcendent, where does creativity or insight or truth come from? Well, the truth is whole. Truth is, first of all, truth is one. It can't be divided. Truth is the totality. So you can't even see truth. We talk about truth as being this or that, but that's not what we're talking about when you say truth with a capital T. Truth is the whole. Can't be divided. So when we see truth, it's always going to be an insight. It's always going to be a revelation. So revelation and insight into the truth, which trumps the green screen reality in which we function in. We all function in a green screen reality of seeing the world according to ourselves, you see. But if when we have a revelation or an insight or an intuition or And Zen is called samadhi, not or satori or kensho. Aha, I see. Or the detectives. Aha, I see. I know who did it. You see? Where does that come from? That gestalt that suddenly sees the whole picture at once. It's like when you're doing a puzzle and maybe you've got half the picture, half the puzzle's put in there and you don't know what you're doing, and then suddenly, oh, it's a duck. Another person says, well, you know, so everybody's going to see the duck at different levels. It's like the game. What is it? What's the game? And they do that where you have number words with holes in it, and who can see the whole sentence first, you see? Who can see the gestalt? Who can get the whole from just a few clues, right? So where does that totality come from? It comes from the transcendent being that breaks through the green screen when you surrender your attachment to your narrow focus meaning. So when we surrender our attachment and certainty in the meaning that we get from our green screen, you see, when we relax our gripping of truth and our gripping of I know, I'm righteousness, when we relax righteousness, I let go of that, being to totality, the gestalt, pops through in a, oh, I see. And then we know what to do. Because now we're in, for that time, we're in alignment with reality. We're in alignment with being. If you want to put it in a religious context, you're in alignment with God. Put it in a Buddha context, you're in alignment with the Dharma, or the Tao, you see. So the Tao, the Dharma, God, the Word, this is all transcendent of experience, and the only way to get in alignment with it is to surrender our grasping for truth and our grasping for meaning according to our green screen background, which is applied to the green screen from our conditioning and our preferred religion or philosophical or personal background. All of that conditioning, all that layers of conditioning goes into the green screen background that gives meaning to our everyday facts that everybody sees but has different meanings for. So, I feel better now. I know who did it. So I'll see you in the morning with another Totally quote.